So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you two options for the backfill. One option is the WS605S, which is a silicon Sikkasil WS605S. The other one is Sikaflex 295UV, which is a polyurethane adhesive sealant. You've really got a few different options here really, and it's very application dependent on how you go about it. Here we have monolithic mineral glass. If you had laminated glass with either an EVA interlayer or in some situation a PVB, then you would need to use the silicon Sikkasil WS605S. This is because the polyurethane adhesives and polyurethane adhesive and sealant can interact with the EVA and PVB layer, which causes a situation we often call fogging, which is basically contaminating the interlayers in the glass. On the other side, the other options are sometimes people don't want to use silicons, so when working with monolithic glass, when you've got painting going on with metal vessels, silicon can cause contamination, so people go over to polyurethane, which is where the 295UV comes in. Both sealants are very easy to tool and work with, and we will demonstrate that now to you. So what Neil's just done here is he's stabbed the unipack here. There's no need to cut the whole area off. That stabbing will give enough flow of the material, but at the same time, if you were to cut the whole thing off, it can be very messy. This just makes it much easier to load the applicator.
And you have put the right bloody end in.
So what Neil is doing here is he's now applying the Sikkasil WS605S. As you can see, Neil is gunning out slightly more than the actual recess area. There's a reason for this, which we'll show you in a bit more detail shortly, but effectively, by applying slightly more than the edge of the window, shortly we will compress this material into the backfill, which will make sure that we've got no air gaps between the bond line and the within the backfill recess. It also makes it far easier to tool afterwards by pulling the filleting ball or the palu around the edge to remove that excess material, rather than having not enough material to work with. Okay, so now Neil is showing you the Sikaflex 295UV. This is the polyurethane sealant for the backfill. This can be used when you're working with monolithic mineral glass, but again cannot be used when you're working with laminated glass where you've got an EVA or PVB interlayer that is exposed. So here you see that Neil is compressing the material into the backfill to make sure there are no voids. And now he's working on the side of the Sikaflex 295UV, the polyurethane sealant. So the job of the backfill is part aesthetic and part, of course, to protect the bond line from the marine elements and the UV, and also to protect the window edge from any impacts on the edge of the surface right of the window, which is its weakest point. The part that's aesthetic is what you'll see shortly after, which is when Neil is then tooling it off to create that really crisp external finish. Neil is doing now is he's spraying Seeker tooling agent N over the surface and also over the palu, the tool that he's going to use to create that crisp edge finish. First, he's going to remove the excess material from the recessed edge. This is going to do two things. It's going to create that crisp finish, but it's also going to push any of the last material into any void space that's within the backfill. Tooling agent is really good to use to remove the material, because what's happening is it's giving a form that makes it easy to pull the tool across, but at the same time it's allowing Neil to clean the edges by keeping the surface wet with the tooling agent. It's important to get the glass and the edge of the structure as clean as possible while you're in this phase of the finishing of the glass recess, as this is the easiest phase to remove the excess material. As you can see, the palu with the tooling agent is allowing Neil to clean the edge of the substrate easily. By continuously applying the tooling agent N, the material easily comes off of the substrate and is easily tooled around the edge of the finish of the sealant. So Neil is now going through his final finishing phase, and it's really important to stress at this phase that not to leave any excess material, excess sealant on the structure edge, because ultimately this makes it much more difficult to clean. Neil's using now a little bit of tooling agent N on a lint-free cloth just to pull off any excess material to clean that edge, so we get that nice crisp finish and nothing to do afterwards with any further cleaning. So what Neil's doing now is he's applying the Sikkersil WS605S silicone into the internal side of the backfill. Much like the external side, he's overfilling the joint such that the material can be pushed in to fill any voids in the backfill. This will then create a really nice crisp finish on the internal surface of the window. So Neil's now flattening and pushing in the excess material to make sure there's no voids in the internal backfill. This also gives an easier surface to work with when you're tooling off the edge to give that crisp external finish or internal finish in this respect when using the palu. So same again, Neil is using Seeker tooling agent N to make for an easy movement with the palu across the internal face of the backfill and removing the excess material. And whilst moving with this motion, it's also compressing the sealant up into the joint, which means that there won't be any voids within the internal backfill. As you can see, Neil continues to use the Seeker tooling agent N in order to be able to easily work across the surface of the sealant, meaning that he's not getting any dragging in the material, and gradually removing slightly more material to get that crisp finish that he's looking for. So Seeker Cleaner P is a great material to remove any excess material from the substrate of the ship. What you do not want to do is put the Seeker Cleaner P anywhere near the sealant, as this could contaminate the joint.